Yow, man! Welcome to the Frickcast and to my updated rankings of every Dr. Squatch brick. We now have 65 bars, including OGs, limiteds, and an ungodly amount of collabs. So today we'll be ranking each one, worst to best, using my trademarked tier lists. Now I won't be going super in depth with each one, because I'll just end up repeating a lot of the same stuff, and that'll make for a boring, drawn out video. Instead, I will mainly talk about what makes them unique, or how they stand out from the pack. If you do want a more detailed review of each one though, check out my SIP guides, which I'll link to in the description and at the end of this video. Today though, you're going to get my current, updated thoughts on every brick, and I have retried most of these in preparation for this list. I have 6 tiers that I'll explain along the way when we get to each one. Now I've taken several factors into account when ranking these bars, including scent, ingredients, how it cleans, the theme, the vibe, and more. So if you haven't clicked off yet, let's get slamming. Our bottom tier, the Oh god! Tier is our worst one, trash bag bricks. Now there are a few Squatch bars that I feel are truly bad, and even these here have some redeeming qualities. But to end up in this tier, a brick really needs to do something wrong. To kick things off, at 65, our worst ranked bar is going to be the Bow Chicka Wow Wow. Now I know what some of you channel veterans may be thinking. Frick, didn't you used to glaze the hell out of this bar? Yes I did. But the Bow Wow's Lucifer level fall from grace isn't because my tastes have changed, rather the formula did, or at least the quality has taken a major dip. For a Valentine's Day limited, the Bow Wow had all the love sucked out of it, going from a delicious treat to pure, unbridled ass. I used to love the bar for its chocolate-covered strawberry scent, and its use of aphrodisiacs was a clever touch. And while the aphrodisiacs may remain, their effect does not, because nothing can make up for the putrid scent. There are a few bars that I find actually smell bad, but the current Bow Wow has a poor combination of artificial strawberry and rancid chocolate. The only saving grace now is that the potency is normally quite weak, but that's not really something to be proud of. And before anyone asks, this new form is apparently how it's supposed to be. I reached out to Squatch and that's what they said. This once lovely brick used to be like a bad bitch. Now it's just a bad batch. The Dark Side Scrub really earns the scrub in its name. And I'm not referring to the grit. Nope, it's a poorly made brick, much like modern Star Wars. Now it does have cool, lore-friendly ingredients. Sand, the only thing Vader hates more than younglings. Chokeberry, like when he choked his pregnant wife. And charcoal, like he became when he got dick-slapped into a volcano by the boy Obi-Wan. However, these ingredients fail to elevate this bar. The heavy sand-based grit is almost non-existent, as is the smoky scent I'm told this bar has. I know some people love this bar, and maybe you got better versions than I did, but I've tried it several times over the years, from what I would have to assume are several different batches, and it's never been good. I can only review and rank what I've been given, and in my experience, the Dark Side Scrub is not worthy of the shower. It's only worthy of the trash can. The Cedar Citrus used to be one of the most advertised Squatch bricks, often sold in bundles alongside the fan favorite Pine Tar. Now you may think that's because it's one of its strongest, most popular bars, but I think it was more so them just trying to get rid of it. The Cedar Citrus always had potential, but always had problems as well. It was a troubled brick that could never overcome its demons, resulting in it being the first OG that Squatch discontinued, disgraced to forever be a limited. Now it did have nice ingredients, including one of my favorites in rosemary oil, but nothing really stood out in this bar. The lather was very mid, and the scent was very weak. There was no citrus or orange to be found, just cedarwood, and I'm honestly not a huge fan of cedar to begin with. I really wanted to like this brick back in the day, but each time I gave it another chance, it left me disappointed and saying, "You ain't it, boy. You just ain't." The Cold Brew Cleanse is another bar with potential held back by one major issue: the grit. Unlike the Dark Side Scrub, this brick definitely earns its heavy grit label, but it's kind of too much in my opinion. And before you call me a bitch for not being able to handle the heavy grit, that's not quite the issue here. I don't mind a heavy grit, it's not always my first choice, but I won't dock it points for roughness. I like using them every now and then, but the cold brew cleanse is just unpleasant. The coffee grounds are absolutely obnoxious. They make a complete mess as they stick to the shower floor and embed themselves like shards of glass in your skin. They just aren't a good exfoliant in a bar. They don't dissolve, they're too abrasive, and come off the brick too easily. You may enjoy flaying yourself alive with them, that's fine, but there's no way you enjoy the grounds just getting everywhere. Now behind all of that, turns out is a really nice bar. I love coffee flavored things, and while the scent is more of a brown sugar one than just straight up coffee, I do find it to be very nice. Honestly, if you just cut the amount of coffee grounds in half, I'd probably have it ranked a tier, maybe 2 higher. But as it stands now, I find it pretty much unusable. The Thousand Sword Scrub does not earn its name. It sounds like it should be a Gigachad, like Robert Baratheon, but it's overall very weak. It does have some decent grit to it, but I think it needs to be much heavier to truly warrant its namesake. Still, what really holds it back for me is the scent. I know some people have different experiences with this one than I did, but again, I can only review what I've been sent. And to me, the Thousand Sword Scrub is best described as a candy orange scent with a slight touch of cedar, sort of like the cedar citrus deodorant. The cedar does come through a bit more as you use it, but again, it's not enough. It isn't horrible, but it's not really a manly scent. The potency though is perhaps the worst part about it. The Briccs I have now have all but completely lost their scent. Maybe it's just me, but with some of the recent Squatch releases, when I get the bars in the mail, the potency is quite strong, but after a few days it dies down to the point where they're barely there. Like the ending of Game of Thrones, the Thousand Sword Scrub is very disappointing. It feels so half-assed and thrown together. Perhaps the most controversial pick so far, I think the Freedom Fresh has to be one of the most disappointing bars Squatch has ever released. Now the box design, both new and old, is top 5, easily, but the soap itself does not earn that bold American theme. How are you going to make a 4th of July brick and give it a weak scent? The potency to me has always been its biggest flaw. An American themed scent needs to be strong and in your face, not faint and barely noteworthy. The scent that is there is decent, a mostly fresh, breezy smell, but it's nowhere near the level of the Freedom Fresh Dio, which is so much better in my opinion. I don't know why they can't just make the bar like that. I was never a huge fan of the chalky milk, but in this bottom tier it's maybe the bar I have the least disdain for. The brick does at least have a funny theme, and it's hard to hate on Squatch for trying something like this out. I was close to moving it up a tier to be honest, but then I smelled it again and remembered why I've been so low on it. The chocolate scent is just not appetizing. It's not as putrid as what's found in the Bow Wow, but it still smells like it's well past its expiration date. This bar is a lot like what I imagine the Chocolate River in Willy Wonka must smell like. Sure, it seems good at first, but there's no way that shit is passing a health inspection. Not to mention all the fat ass kids that likely drowned in it. Wait, what were we talking about again? Oh, that's right, we were discussing how the gold moss is the most basic bitch brick ever. Now back in the prehistoric days of Squatch, before they redesigned their packaging, the gold moss scrub was a pretty good bar, with a nice thick ass lather. However, like the Bow Wow, it really suffered from a downgrade in formula and quality. It at least did get its brown color back recently though. Now I bought and used it again in preparation for this ranking, and it was somehow more disappointing than when I reviewed it before. The Gold Moss is one of only 2 bars that have no unique ingredients. The only semi-unique thing is the scent, which isn't exactly great. It's not bad, it's a sweet, earthy scent, but it's very weak potency-wise, and does little to stand out against the dozens of Briccs released after. I used to rank it a tier higher, because I thought of it as a bare-bones Squatch bar. That wasn't bad on its own, it was just every other brick was an overall improvement on it. And while I still agree with that last part, I no longer see it as really being good. It offers nothing that you can't get elsewhere. We've reached the quite Aight tier. These are bars that I do think are good, or at least decent, so I won't be as negative here. However, I do still find them to be incredibly mid in the grand scheme of Squatch. I think the textbook example of a decent but underwhelming bar is the Eucalyptus Greek Yogurt, the only other OG to be discontinued, which I don't think was as warranted as the Cedar Citrus, but I can't really blame them for it either. Unlike every brick we've discussed so far, I don't think there's really anything bad about it, but it really just fails to impress. The combination of eucalyptus, Greek yogurt, and oatmeal sound like the makings of a stalwart OG, but there's just not enough of any of them here. The oatmeal, which was meant to add some grit, may as well not even be listed. It's not in the bar. The Greek yogurt seems absent as well, because the clean feels very basic. The eucalyptus does provide most of the scent, and I've come to appreciate the smell of eucalyptus much more over the years, but the potency of it is a bit weak in the eucalyptus Greek yogurt. If they had just made this bar the way it should be made, I don't think it would have needed to be axed. Again, I always kinda liked this brick, but there's just not enough reason to rank it any higher. I think of the Alpine Sage in a similar way to the previous one, an older OG that used to be much more prominent and noteworthy, but has been overshadowed by the many new releases over the years. Back when the Sage Boy was sailing the 7 seas, and not a hermit living in the mountains, it used to be one of my favorite bricks. It was one of the first I used, and I absolutely loved it. The combination of lavender and clary sage made for a more floral, herbal scent that was like freshly cleaned linen. It was never the most manly, but I do feel the smell has become more perfumey over the years. The lavender kinda gives me a headache, and I find myself never wanting to use it. Most of the time though, I forget that this bar even still exists. The Bronco brick is a brick that I just can't really get excited about. It's basically just an ad for a Ford Bronco. And I know that it's a collab, but we'll be talking about much cooler collabs soon. This bar though just feels like a very forgettable, one and done type of release. That being said though, it's overall very solid for the most part. Blue agave extract is a great ingredient that gives it a hydrating boost. Easily the best feeling wash thus far. The scent is sort of a sporty, outdoorsy one with notes of pine and lemon. At least, I think, because this bar pretty much lost its potency in like a week. But what is there is a pretty fresh smell. I know I sound like I'm hating on it, but I probably have more good to say about this bar than bad. Squatch just has a lot of bricks, and most of them are good, so I have to differentiate them somehow, and make some tough decisions. Built Ford tough decisions. The resistance rinse seems like it should stand out a lot more than it does. Still, I've always thought it was solid. This is the Ray edition from the second Star Wars collection, a collection I think is underrated for the most part. It does contain one of my favorite ingredients in Resurrection Plant, but other than that, the brick is a bit bland. It isn't the most moisturizing out there either, as you'd maybe expect given the ingredients, and I don't really care for the floral scent. I don't find it particularly fresh, but it is somewhat clean. It's decent, but not quite what you'd expect from a Squatch bar. All that being said though, it's more unique than most we've discussed so far, and if you like a more subtle, dry, floral fragrance, then check out this chick brick. I carry a lot of that same energy with the energy bar. Does anyone even remember the boosted bricks? Now the energy bar is a bit of the opposite of the resistance rinse. It's a very bold brick, with an early bird gets the worm mentality. So here we have a bar with a decent clean and a powerful scent, by far the most potent we've discussed so far. So why is it so low? Well, I find the orange, zesty scent to be an artificial one. It smells more like some orange-flavored workout powder, as opposed to freshly squeezed oranges. It's also one of the messier bars on the menu. The red pigment bleeds a lot, and can make a mess of things in the shower. It's not that big of a deal, but it does make the energy bar that much more unpleasant to use. Well, we're 2 Game of Thrones bricks in already, with the Viserions Freeze. I really wanted to like this bar, but it falls flat in several ways. For one, I feel like we just have too many of these types of scents now. A sporty, clean, body wash style. They all kind of feel like wannabe Fresh Falls. What does slightly separate the Viserions Freeze though, is the more icy vibe it has. It does smell cool and fresh. It's nice actually, and really does capture that north of the wall feel. Well, somewhat. It was supposed to have an icy feel to it via menthol crystals, but unfortunately the menthol is lacking here. It's just not enough, and you boys know I love my menthol. So all of that makes for a solid but flawed brick. Also, every time I see the undead dragon on the front, I think of the Game of Thrones ending again and get slightly annoyed. I don't know why Squatch just didn't do the 4 great houses for the collection. Perhaps our biggest riser so far is the Bay Rum. I've always appreciated the bay rum flavor, but it was overshadowed by more recent OG releases. Now, the bay rum is an extremely simple brick. It's the only other bar, aside from the gold moss, to feature no unique ingredients. What the bay rum does have over the gold moss, though, is a beautiful scent, a warm Caribbean spiced one, with cinnamon, cloves, and the like. It's a great smelling bar, but that's kinda where it ends. It's great for Squatch or natural soap beginners, but once you've dabbled in some of the finer bricks to be offered, it's easy to cast the bay rum aside, as it's weaker cleaning than most. Still though, nothing is especially bad here, and I do love the scent. The Liberty Lather, aka America's Brick, is another one of the sporty body wash variety. I used to not really care for it, but upon revisiting the Avengers collection, I found it to be much better. It's a fresh, sporty, very pleasant smell, with some berry and cedar notes. It does come across as a bit generic, but not bad by any means. In fact, that might fit Captain America. I'd say it's the most refreshing brick to use thus far on our list. I've just never been a huge fan of the Spearmint Basil. Sure, the potency is strong, sure, it's very fresh and clean, but to me it just smells like Orbit gum. I love mint in just about anything, but I just find it to be perhaps too much here. The bar is so strong that it will take over the scents of the bricks stored next to it. Now I like a strong potency, so I won't really dock it for that, but again I just keep feeling like I'm showering with chewing gum. Most of the bars in this tier I find to be mostly forgettable, but that is not the case with the Moonrock, which I find to be more unique, but also niche. The Moonrock is one of the coolest looking bricks you'll find. It's also a masochist brick, because this is the roughest bar on the menu. The pumice here feels like rubbing an actual Moonrock on your skin. I'd wager it's too rough for most people, but I like that about it, it makes it stand out. It's not an ideal amount for me personally, but I do like using it every once in a while, and I do appreciate the whole vibe it's going for. The scent is a little weaker though. It's very clean, somewhat floral, and does make me think of the sterile environment inside of a spaceship or something, but unfortunately, it does have a weak potency. I like that this bar exists, but it's not one that I really seek out when I need a new brick, and overall, I find it to be very niche. The Summer Citrus was the replacement for the Cedar Citrus, and I do think it was a noticeable improvement. The cedar is gone, and the orange is gone too. Well, it was never really there to begin with, but regardless, lemon is the star of the show now, and it works well enough. One thing I have noticed is that Squatch can often struggle with fruity scents, at least when it comes to smelling like a natural fruit. The Summer Citrus does smell a bit like Lemon Pledge or something like that, but I get more of a lemon tart or pastry vibe from it more than anything. It's pleasant and clean, which pairs well with the nice light grit, making for an overall unoffensive bar. Next up, the Fuego Fresh, the Jalapeno Boy. That's right, a jalapeno soap. Now a lot of people thought that this would burn their Jimmy Johnson and the boys, but that was not the case. In fact, there's no actual jalapeno in this bar, and not really a spicy jalapeno scent either. There's a slight touch of it in the background, but mostly this is a sweet amber smell that is very pleasant, but probably not what you're expecting. I like it, but I'd like it even more in another bar. I really wanted the Fuego Fresh to bring the heat main. I may have it a bit high, but I do feel like it has one of the better lathers so far. It feels great to use. It'll spice up the shower, burn away dirt and grime, but not burn away your tallywhacker. We've now reached the Bricc Be Bussin tier. These are bars that I feel are good. They may have some flaws, but the positives outweigh the negatives. The Only Hope soap is a bar I've historically been lower on than most, but I think I'm finally starting to see why the community liked it so much more than myself. In the modern age of Squatch, being a simple brick isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it actually plays into the bar's favor, and I think that's the case with the humble Obi-Wan Boy. It's a weaker scent overall, but the herbal smell of thyme is a pleasant one. The lather is better than average as well, making for just a chill time. Overall, I think it just works. Yeah, I kinda like the Only Hope soap now, and I feel like I might have it too high now, but I just didn't want to put it behind any of the ones we've discussed. Plus, it's Obi-Wan, and the boy deserves his respect. Perhaps it is a bit disrespectful though, to put his rival, the Ruthless Rinse, one spot ahead. From the same collection, I feel the Darth Maul counterpart stands out in a more unique way. It's actually spicier than the Fuego Fresh is, but has some fruitiness as well. It's sort of this exotic combo of spice and fruit that makes for an interesting scent. It's not always the most pleasant or refreshing, though it can hit the spot every now and then. It's also got some decent grit too, again much more than the Dark Side Scrub from the same collection. The Ruthless Boy is just one of those that seems gimmicky, but is more practical than you may expect, and it's about the only time Darth Maul will ever best Obi-Wan. The King of the Bricks doesn't quite earn its name. Sure, it's solid and has some things going for it, but for a T-Rex themed Jurassic brick, with a name like that it's really gotta make a statement, and it doesn't. It's hard not to look at this bar as an inferior version of the Batman brick, but that's not entirely fair, as it does have some unique things too. The scent is more earthy than leather, with some musk. It's pretty manly and pretty decent, but like the sporty types of bars we've been talking about, this style of scent is one that Squatch likes to reuse, and I think it's easily the worst or least best of its kind. The heavier grit is fine, everything's fine here, but the King of the Bricks just really doesn't have much appeal outside of its initial release. It's hard for me to rank the Stone IPA, as it's been so long since it was last dropped. I mainly have to go off of memory, but I do remember the Stone IPA being a fantastic brick, so maybe if anything, it should be higher. The beer, the hops, the menthol, all cool ingredients, as was the scent, which had lemongrass in it as well. Also one of the coolest looking bars on this list. If I could choose one of the long lost limiteds to bring back, I think it might be this one. I'd love to try a fresh version of it again. Here we go. It's the loathsome Scrub Smash, the bane of the Walmart clearance shelf. I understand why so many are put off by this bar, but allow me to make the case for it. Why everyone hates it is of course because the initial scent is an almighty spicy pickle or jalapeno one. Again, it's much spicier than the Fuego Fresh. I'll admit though it's not a particularly pleasant or good scent. However, once you use it, things become much different. As with any good shower, the spicy pickle transforms into a fresh cucumber. The scent is still strong, and there is still a touch of jalapeno spice, but it's mainly just a cucumber smell that's much more refreshing than you would have ever expected. The heavier grit is also nice, and it winds up being a surprisingly pleasant bar. This is why you can never really judge a brick until you've used it a few times. All that being said though, it's not one I'm necessarily excited to use, and I think the Hulk is a bitch. So this spot is higher than I anticipated it would be, but I just didn't really want to put any of the previous ones ahead of it. I think it's a fair spot. To me, the Spidey Suds is similar to the Scrub Smash, in that it alternates between a good, pleasant scent and a pretty off-putting one. Usually though, it's pretty decent. It's another body wash style one that's sporty, but this time with notes of berry and musk. Sometimes it's very refreshing when the berry takes over. Sometimes not so much when the musk takes over. Overall, with the spider-themed ingredients, I think it fits the theme of the web slinger and makes for a pretty solid brick. The Bliss brick is just very chill. I could have easily put it lower, but the vibe alone is elevating it. The sleepy time look, the nice box art, it's all peaceful, but the bar itself isn't bad by any means. It's a more subtle scent that's somewhat earthy, sour, and medicinal. It has a therapeutic spa feel to it. I do find it to be much more appealing than its sunny Boosted Bricks counterpart, the Energy Bar. But maybe that's just because I'm not a morning person. The Area 51 brick is a limited that almost feels like an OG, a part of the Galaxy bundle. It's the most down to earth, and that's because, well, it's the only one from Earth. Area 51 to be precise, which means aliens and desert. Really though, the theme of the bar is mostly desert. It's a fresh cactus scent that is refreshing and different than most other bars on the menu. It says it has sand as a highlighted ingredient, but I've never noticed any grit here. Just a smooth brick that glides like a flying saucer through the stars. The Irish Creamed Whiskey is a hard one for me to rank. Like its Valentine's Day counterpart, this St. Patrick's Day Limited has suffered from some quality issues in more recent releases. But I haven't tried the newest versions like I have with the Bow Wow, so I still have it relatively high. The original Irishman was one of the best limiteds Squatch made. The scent was subtle, a mix of cream and mocha, and the bar was buttery smooth. It was slammed full of beneficial Irish-themed ingredients, like stout beer, that made for a rich lather. More recent releases though have lost some of the scent, the cleaning abilities, and overall charm. The Frosty Peppermint used to be one of my favorite overall Briccs, and I'll always have an appreciation for it for beginning my menthol addiction, but I don't think it's a bar that has aged as well as some others from its era, and doesn't hold up as well against some more recent releases. It is a bit gimmicky, but it's a fun gimmick. This Bricc is basically a candy peppermint. It looks like it, smells like it, and even feels like it, having sort of a chalky texture that I don't recall on any other bar. The addition of menthol crystals adds that signature chilling sensation to it that makes it feel better to use than average. Overall, the peppermint theme is cool. I like the scent, although it's not the strongest, and the menthol here is a decent amount. Could be more though, but it's still a great Christmas Bricc. The Rainforest Rapids was the replacement for the Eucalyptus Greek Yogurt, and I do think it's a notable improvement. Instead of just being a straight up eucalyptus scent, it's now a mix of eucalyptus, licorice, and some sporty, medicinal, and herbal notes, for an overall clean and fresh smell, reminiscent of a rainforest. It's not one of the deepest cleaning OGs, but it's above average, and I think it was a solid addition to the menu that filled a vacant spot. We're almost halfway through the list, and just now we have our first Harry Potter bar, the Grit of the Genius. So that should tell you what I think of the overall quality of that collection. This is the Ravenclaw boy, so the nerd one, and I do think it is the weakest of the four. Definitely not weak potency-wise though, as the scent is extremely strong. One of the most powerful on the menu. It's mostly an airy, breezy, sporty cologne scent. It kinda comes off as a cheap body spray, more than anything though. It's not a horrible scent, but it is very strong, and not always in a good way. I do like it though, I just find it to be a bit much at times. And to finish off this tier is the Stark Cleanse, the Iron Boy. Another simple Bricc. This is what really kickstarted Squatch's newfound focus on creating amber-scented bars. And this is one of the better ones out there. It's mostly an amber cologne smell, with some spice as well. It actually has the same red pepper extract as the Fuego Fresh. Now, unlike the Grit of the Genius, whose cologne scent comes off as cheap, this one is more sophisticated and refined. It's a great scent capturing that billionaire, Tony Stark vibe. I do think though that it is one of the weaker cleaning ones in this tier. I would say it's below average in general in that department. However, the scent alone is enough for me to rank it this high, as it is an incredible smell. They should really make it a cologne. We've now reached the rather nifty tier. These are great Briccs, and while they are kept out of the elite tiers for one reason or another, I'm not sure I would actually change anything about them. They are unique, and bars that I enjoy quite a bit. Really the biggest knock on them is that there are just a lot of great Squatch Briccs, that some have to be ranked lower. Perhaps a controversial take, but it's the fabled Pine Tar that will be kicking off this tier. Aside from the Fresh Falls, I imagine the Pine Tar is the most well-known bar offered by Squatch. It's an iconic flavor, and for good reason. However, I feel the Bricc has suffered from quality control issues as of late. One of the most recent times I've used it, the bar felt tacky and smelled like oil. But even when I don't get a clearly bad batch, the Pine Tar just seems to lack that X factor that once made it feel so unique. That being said though, this is a great Bricc, and when it's done right, it can go toe-to-toe with anyone. Pine tar as an ingredient makes for one of the deepest cleaning experiences on the menu, and the heavy grit, via the nice duo of sand and oatmeal, give it more exfoliation than most of its peers, without being too much. The Pine Tar is a bar I'd heavily recommend to new Squatchers, as it will help detox your body of the body wash trash. The scent is also that classic Pine Tar one. It's not just straight up pine. It's a bit more like Pine Sol in some ways, but it's overall fresh, clean, and manly. I find the Raptor Rush to be the more memorable of the Jurassic Briccs pair. It has a scent that better captures that jungle vibe, mainly sour melon. Like the Thousand Sword Scrub, the fruitiness is more candy-esque than natural. However, I feel like it works better this time around, especially with the earthy notes in the background that help round out the scent into a pleasant and unique one. Plus, this brick has dinosaur egg melon. The Free Solo Scrub is another addition to the lineup of sporty bricks, but it does a bit more to make a name for itself. A collab with daredevil rock climber Alex Honnold, this limited is remembered fondly by the community. Personally, it kind of reminds me of a woodsy version of the Fresh Falls. It's still that fresh, manly smell, but with notes of pine and cedar, capturing the spirit of the great outdoors. Compared to the pine tar, neither are straight up forest scents. Stay tuned for that, but I do find the Free Solo Scrub to smell better as a woodsy style brick. The Black Hole is the second best of the Galaxy collection. Apricot Stone does add a sharp touch of grit, but otherwise this is the sleekest feeling bar on the menu. Part of that probably has to do with the jet black appearance, with splashes of purple. Cool looking brick. The scent is also noteworthy. It's potent and in my opinion, mostly a fruity tea smell. To be honest, it kind of reminds me of the peach tea at Olive Garden. The Riddler Enigma is our first of the Batman duo. And while some prefer this green boy to its Dark Knight counterpart, I've always preferred the Batman brick. That doesn't mean though that the Riddler Enigma isn't a great bar. In fact, I find it to be somewhat underrated at this point. The scent is sour green apple, and it's very potent as well, actually overpowering the Batman brick in the collector's box. The scent is refreshing, fruity, it's all around great, and the bar just feels very fresh to use. Another underrated fruity brick is the Grapefruit IPA. Like I mentioned earlier, I think fruity scents are something Squatch can struggle with, but with the Riddler Enigma and Grapefruit IPA, they nailed it. An often overlooked OG, this boy is another very refreshing bar. This time though, it's spiked with beer and hops. The hops adds some hoppiness to the scent, but mainly this is just a grapefruit boy. Despite the nifty addition of beer, I always found the cleaning ability of this brick to be lacking a bit, although not bad by any means, but enough to keep it from being ranked any higher. I've always been a big fan of the Suds of Darkness, namely its manly scent, which was surprising given its theme. I remember when Kylo Ren first appeared in the new trilogy, thinking, okay, this guy actually seems pretty cool. No Darth Vader, but he could be a decent villain. But then he took his mask off and threw his little bitch tantrums. Well, this bar is the opposite of that. It gives a bad first impression due to the Han Solo murdering bitch boy on the box, but it leaves a strong, lasting, positive impression because the bar itself is great. The scent is mostly a cologne one, but it's got a certain storminess to it, something that would be revisited to some extent in a later bar. To me, it's always reminded me of like if you've ever been deep underground in a mine or cave or something along those lines. Like the Stark Cleanse, it would make for a great actual cologne, as it's manly and very pleasant, unlike the Iron Boy though. This bar also feels great to use. It is a nice medium grit to round out an excellent experience. I feel very similarly with the Sinister Scrub, which is in the same collection. This one is another strong scent, this time being more of a fruity jam smell, giving it a certain fall feel. I'm not sure what that has to do with the Emperor, but I do like the purple, and I do like the sweet, jammy scent. It's another gritty bar, a bit heavier than the Suds of Darkness, this time using black currant seeds instead of pumice or rhyolite. No wonder the dark side is so tempting. I guess this is how Emperor Belichick snagged that cheerleader. And again, I feel very similarly with the legendary Lather, which is, once again, a part of the same collection, and the final one from it. I go back and forth on which of the trio I like best, but I always like ranking them together because I find them all to be bars I really enjoy. Unlike the previous two, the Skywalker boy has no grit, just like Luke in A New Hope. Instead, this brick is entirely carried by its scent, which may just be the most peaceful one on the menu. It's a grassy scent, very vibrant, clean, and chill. It's like springtime, and it just smells very fresh and appealing. I think the second Star Wars collection was very underrated. 3 of the 4 bars are great, and even the Rey Chick Brick was decent. Speaking of underrated collections, it's the Brick of the Brave from the Harry Potter collection, the Gryffindor boy. I'm not even entirely sure how to describe this one. It's supposed to be like the Gryffindor common room, with a crackling fire. To me, it's another cologne style, mostly. There is some smokiness, some warmth, and strong notes of berry. There's not really anything else like it on the menu. With a nice amount of grit, it's a brick that not only smells and feels great, but that captures the vibe of its house. Well, here's another Harry Potter one, the Suds of the Sly. I view this Slytherin brick about equal with the Brick of the Brave, but as a Slytherin, I'm not gonna put the Gryffindor one higher. I do think the Suds of the Sly, though, is a very underrated bar. It's a bit similar to the Rainforest Rapids and Bliss Brick, in that it's very chill, with a herbal, medicinal scent. It's a little sweet, maybe with a touch of vanilla, but it's again very relaxing. It doesn't quite smell as aquatic as its Black Lake advertisement though. The Suds of the Sly is also a smooth brick, 0 grit, instead slithering like a snake, but it does have one of the thickest slathers of recent releases. I don't think there's a more misunderstood bar than the Spartan Scrub. Well, maybe the Scrub Smash, but this Halo collab is one of the manliest and most unique on the menu. I understand why people despise it, but those reasons are also why I think rather highly of it. It's unapologetic, unforgiving, and not for everyone. The scent is metallic and woody, like burnt metal and sawdust in a wood shop, or, if you prefer, freshly forged weapons and armor for Master Chief. That may sound, and be, unpleasant to some, but I kinda like it. It's not going to be the most refreshing, but it's manly and it's much different than anything else. Of course, it's also going to have a heavier grit, which feels nice. The Cool Fresh Aloe and I go way back. It was the first bar I used, and ever since that fateful day, I've never touched body wash again, except with gloves. The Cool Fresh Aloe has undergone at least one major formula change over the years, but it remains an ironclad, well-made brick that can handle even the driest skin. The aloe vera here makes this one of the most moisturizing that Squatch offers, and with 0 grit, also one of the most gentle. This is more of a cleaning-based bar than a scent-based one, but the scent is very pleasant as well. It reminds me of a rainy spring morning, as it's dewy and fresh. It's always a great choice. One bar that I've recently fallen for is the Drogon's Blaze, which is the 3rd and final of the Game of Thrones collection. And to me it almost single-handedly makes the bundle worthwhile. Where the other 2 falter, this one rises. This is another one of those amber-style scents, but I find it to be the best version of it. Again, it's a sweet amber smell, but this time with fruity, spicy, and warm undertones. It's a very balanced scent that doesn't go too far into any one note. I love that about it, but I also think it's the best one to use from the collection as well. It has a more medium grit, that's always nice, and cleans a bit deeper. The Drogon theme I think is the coolest as well, and the brick does a good job of fitting it. So we're a couple spots into the top 20 now, and we're just finally talking about our first Halloween boy, the Werewolf Wash. So as you can see, I think very highly of Squatch's spooky offerings. I've seen many have the Werewolf Wash as their favorite of the lineup, and I wouldn't blame you if that's you. The Werewolf Wash has a potent, beastly scent that is yet again best described as a cologne style. But it's honestly a bit hard to pinpoint exactly what it is. To me it's always reminded me of cola, with some sweet spice to it, but in any case it's a refreshing scent that pairs well with the forget-me-not seed based grit that the Werewolf Boy is also rocking with. The Lather of the Loyal is the best of the Harry Potter collection. You may not expect the Huffle Boy to come out on top, but it's full of surprises, especially the delicious scent that makes it by far the most unique. It's basically a warm pastry scent, with notes of maple syrup, honey, caramel, and especially butterscotch, or just anything sweet, breakfasty, or dessert-esque. It's got a little oatmeal for a touch of grit, but essentially it boils down to whether or not freshly baked treats in a soap sounds interesting to you. If so, then you'll like this brick. If not, well, you probably won't. And to finish off this tier, it's the Divine Storm, the Thor Boy. Thor's always been my favorite of the Avengers, and so the brick themed after him was the one I was looking forward to the most when the collection dropped. At first I was a little underwhelmed with it, but upon retrying it recently, I found I appreciated it much more. It's similar to the Suds of Darkness, as both have that stormy scent, and honestly I originally thought I'd have the Suds of Darkness higher, but I think what I ended up liking more about the Storm Boy was its spice. It's a stormy, manly cologne smell, but it has a touch of spice and musk to it that I think makes it a bit more well-rounded. Throw in the grit and you have yourself a brick worthy of being wielded in the shower. We've now reached the something else entirely tier, as well as the top 15. Like the previous section, I love all of the ones here, but I can't exactly put all of them in God tier. These though are close, and I wouldn't blame anyone for having any of these, as they're number 1 overall. Let's begin with the Mars bar, the pride and joy of the Galaxy bundle. One of the first limiteds dropped, I was instantly blown away by this bar's scent. Powerful, red-hot cinnamon, not unlike the candy. However, it's much more pleasant and practical than you may expect. It really doesn't feel too gimmicky. To me, it's perfect for a Mars theme, and the brick is loaded with other Mars-themed ingredients as well, making for an awesome bar. One of the better medium grits as well. In terms of a brick being designed to fit a certain theme, I think the Mars bar is easily one of the top ones. The headless rinse is one of the biggest risers for me, and shows how if just given a few extra months, a brick can really change for the better. Of course, this was the replacement for the legendary Drunken Pumpkin. Now, when I first reviewed it, I thought it was okay. It had some of that trademark Drunken Pumpkin scent, warm, spicy pumpkin bourbon, but it also had this overwhelming pineapple to it that made it pretty disappointing. Fast forward a couple months later, I tried it again, and this was the exact same bar, because I cut it in half before, and was now using the other half. But this time, it was much more pleasant. The pineapple was basically gone, and in its place was that Drunken Pumpkin I'd been missing for so long. Well, mostly. I still think it's a little more fruity and a little less cologne-like, but whatever it is, this time it was an amazing scent. I found the lather to be much better too, thicker and deeper cleaning. I also thought the Headless Horseman was a clever choice for the theme, as it fits both the pumpkin aesthetic as well as Squatch's monster lineup. The original Drunken is still better. I will talk about it more in a moment, but I do think the Headless Rinse is a worthy successor. Released alongside the Headless Rinse was the Count Sudzilla. I find this vampire boy to be just as clever. In fact, I slightly prefer it. Why I think more highly of it is that it's an entirely unique bar, not a redesign of an existing one. The scent is fantastic. Fruit punch meets dark leather. And in reality, it's better than that likely sounds. The leather isn't as intense as some others. It's more in the background, allowing the fruit punch to keep things refreshing. It does fit the Dracula Castle vibe very well, but in that cartoony, Squatch way, like fruit punch instead of blood. Speaking of blood, if there is one issue I have with this bar, it's the red pigment. Similar to the energy bar, the colorant really comes off here. It almost looks like your skin and shower are covered in blood. I guess it fits the aesthetic, but it's also a bit annoying. Still though, I'll tolerate it with this brick because everything else is great. Frick the energy bar though. Is this too low for the wood barrel bourbon? Maybe, but why some others have edged it out is because I feel they are more unique. There's several bars that I find to be pretty similar to the wood barrel bourbon, too similar to have it in God tier, but not too similar for me not to appreciate how great it is in its own right. This OG is one of the most popular for a reason, mostly because the scent is incredible. Some say it's another version of that Drunken Pumpkin flavor, but I've always felt it was different enough to be its own thing. It's more oaky and smooth, but it is still a warm cologne scent that has a gentleman-like quality to it. It's also grittier than you may think. Honestly, this is one of the few times I'd maybe say the grit is a bit heavier than its label. The newest OG, the Maverick Musk, is similar to the wood barrel bourbon, both outlaws, but whereas the wood barrel bourbon was based off of the Drunken Pumpkin, the Maverick Musk is heavily based off of the Batman brick, in the sense of the two are very close, being leather, and I love the smell of leather in these soaps. The Maverick Musk may be a little smoother, have more musk, and be a bit more cologne-like than its Dark Knight predecessor, but it's a potent one that smells great and is one of the most manly on the menu. Of the OG lineup, I'd say it's likely the most manly. It's also, of course, got some good grit too. True grit, just like any cowboy should. I think I still slightly prefer the Batman brick to the Maverick Musk, but it is close. Close enough that I have dropped the Dark Knight brick down a few spots, as it's not quite as unique anymore. But I still do love this bar. The battle-worn leather scent is not only a perfect one for Batman, but a perfect one in general. I find it slightly more peppery than its outlaw counterpart. I also love the use of ingredients like St. John's wort here, containing a Batman-like arsenal of skin benefits. Throw in the grit, and you have a bar ready to fight crime and grime. The Drunken Pumpkin is another classic that has fallen a few spots due to replacement bricks being dropped in its stead. However, I still feel like the Drunken Pumpkin is the best version of this type of brick. The scent is an all-time great one. Warm pumpkin bourbon cologne with fall spices. It's great. I still have a bar of this left, and the scent is still going strong, a testament to its fine craftsmanship, especially considering I have basically brand new bricks that have already lost theirs. I also think the Drunken feels better to use than the Headless Rinse or even the Woodbarrel Bourbon. I like the sleek smoothness. I feel like I've just been talking about the same two bars for the last 10 minutes, the pumpkin ones and the leather ones, but there is a reason these flavors have been redone so many times. However, despite how great they all are, the Drunken Pumpkin, the Batman brick, as well as the others aren't entirely unique. They all have alternative versions of them that are at least on par with each other, unlike some others on the menu that are one of a kind. So I felt they no longer belonged in God tier, as I want to reserve that for the most unique and absolute best. The Drunken Pumpkin though is still an all-time great, and just maybe we'll be seeing it again. If you like pina coladas and getting caught in the shower, then the Coconut Castaway is your bar. Instant hit when it first dropped, and it's remained an OG that I like a lot. The scent is strong and clean. It's mostly toasted coconut, with something of a pina colada smell to it. It's pretty good, but I think there is a world where the scent is maybe a little bit better. I could see how some may find it a bit nauseating, but overall I find it to be more refreshing than anything. What keeps it above the likes of the ones right before it is the clean itself. In terms of just using a bar, the Coconut Castaway is easily top 5. It boasts one of the best lathers. It's milky as it's slammed full of coconut. I also like the use of coconut shreds as grit. It gives a mild, light exfoliation that isn't rough by any means, but does make the brick clean a bit deeper. I love the Crypto Cleanse. I'm not a huge fan of bananas themselves, but I'm a huge fan of banana flavored things. And the Crypto Cleanse is not shy about its big banana energy. The scent is powerful, and it's banana. Maybe with a slight touch of mint, but mainly nanner. And it's refreshing and awesome. That mainly carries the brick, but the grit and everything else makes for a fresh feeling time. The crypto theme may not be everyone's cup of tea, but I do like the color scheme. The box is nice. The Snowy Pine Tar is, in my opinion, the most natural smelling bar on the menu. It's just a straight up pine balsam fir scent, like standing in the middle of an overgrown forest. It also contains pine tar for some added cleaning ability. Honestly, I think it beats the tar out of its older brother, the OG pine tar. While I love the more creative and out there designs Squatch has made, I also love the more simple, straightforward ones as well. And oftentimes it's hard to beat a bar that perfectly captures that woodsy aroma. And now we've reached the best of the best. They might be some sort of god tier. The bars here are perfect. These are bricks that stand above their peers for one reason or another. Well, would you look at that? It's the Wisdom Wash, achieving godhood after all of these years. I just like this bar more and more every time I use it. I'm just always left impressed. Given everything we've discussed, I now believe the Wisdom Wash to be the best collab brick from Squatch, and that's why I've given it a spot in the top 5, as well as a top mount Brick Olympus, Squatch Olympus, whatever. I also find the scent of the Wisdom Wash to perhaps be the most refreshing on the menu. It's very chill and peaceful, yet vibrant and fresh. I think it's best described as an herbal and lime one, but it's excellently balanced. The citrus isn't super fruity, and the herbal notes not super intense. It brings balance to the force. It's also very hydrating to use. Only green lotus is listed as a unique ingredient here, but it goes hard. The bar is also listed as 0 grit, but it does have a very slight amount. Funny enough, more than the Dark Side Scrub. It's crazy how two bars from the same collection can differ so drastically in quality. It's fitting that Yoda is the theme for this brick. Just like him, it's unassuming, but in reality, it's a tank. The Bricc of the Dead is our highest ranked holiday bar and limited edition. Now I used to have it a couple spots higher, but practically speaking I do think it's a bit niche compared to our remaining top 3, which are all OGs and ones I feel are better for everyday use, so I wanted to finish with them. That being said, I absolutely love the Bricc of the Dead. It's actually the bar I'm using right now as I make this video, and I'm finna to hit it again right after I'm done recording. I think it's the most creative overall design Squatch has made. The scent somehow perfectly captures that spooky graveyard vibe. I guess it's mainly an earthy, vanilla one, but it's got this aura of fogginess to it that makes it the perfect Halloween bar. It's got some graveyard-themed ingredients, including ground vanilla vine for a solid medium grit. It may also have my favorite box design, for whatever that's worth. It's been a few years now, but I believe the Bricc of the Dead to remain the most impressive limited edition. The Fresh Falls dominated our community rankings, and it was no surprise. The Fresh Falls is the new flagship of Dr. Squatch, and that's no surprise either. It's simply an amazing brick. This is the pinnacle of that sporty type of scent Squatch favors so much. But no matter how many bricks of that style are released, none come close to the Fresh Falls. It's basically Squatch's take on a body wash type of scent, but actually good. And that's underselling it. The scent is incredible. It's fresh, it's manly, it's strong, and it's pleasant. It does have something of a waterfall vibe to it, given its refreshing nature and deep blue hue. Honestly, everything about this bar just feels so deep, like plunging into the depths of Alaskan water. The look is deep, the scent is deep, and the brick cleans deep. The Fresh Falls deserves all of the praise it gets, but it's not my personal favorite. You mains know that I'm a birch bitch for the Birchwood Breeze. I've loved this bar ever since it first dropped. This is the Squatch version of the vanilla musk style, and the best one I've encountered. The scent is mostly vanilla, but it also has some muskiness and woodsy birchness to make it somewhat manly. I think scent-wise, it's my all-time favorite flavor. I love the Birchwood Breeze Dio. I find the bar also has one of the best medium grits, via pumice. The lather is unique too. It's creamy, and when paired with the scent, it almost reminds me of vanilla ice cream, but in a good way. Now, as much as I glaze the Birchwood Breeze, there is one brick that has always been my tried and true. The Deep Sea Goat's Milk has been, and remains, the greatest Squatch brick of all time. The GOAT. I think it was the 3rd or 4th bar I used back in the day, and ever since then, it's been my favorite. The Deep Sea Goat's Milk manages to stand above all the crazy limiteds and fun collabs by being true to itself. It's a very simple, straightforward brick. The scent is subtle but effective, salty brine, and sour seafoam. It's pleasant and pairs well with the legendary clean this brick is rocking with. The use of goat's milk as an ingredient gives it the thickest lather, the deepest clean, and the most moisturizing, hydrating benefits of any bar. There's even a touch of oatmeal to add just a slight amount of grit and exfoliation to an otherwise smooth brick. The football goat may have retired, but the shower goat is still in its prime. And there you have it, mains. All 65 Dr. Squatch bars re-ranked. This took a while to make, and even now I could see myself making some minor adjustments, but I do think this list shows my overall thoughts. I tried to be as objective as I could, but it's still just my opinions, and you're likely to disagree with at least some of these. So before you go straight to calling me a goofy goober in the comments, let me know what you agree and disagree with. I'm always interested to see other people's rankings. So that's gonna do it for today, mains. I'll see you in the next one, but until then, stay nifty.
Yeah, man!